What is up, everyone? Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the steel mace, why it's such an effective tool at bulletproofing your shoulders, eradicating pain. If you want to learn how to use a steel mace and train like this and get in the best shape of your life and follow a 3-month program and be in a community full of people who are doing this from around the world, hit the link in the description to join. All right. But to get into it, so my background first off on shoulder problems is I've had shoulder problems pretty much my whole life, growing up playing tennis and then getting into training in high school and things like that. I've always had shoulder problems. Long story short, I got shoulder surgery on my right shoulder about 7 years ago. And then a year after that surgery, I still felt the same. I think it was an unnecessary surgery. That's a topic for another video, but I think it was completely pointless. So if you feel like you're there, if you feel like maybe you've developed shoulder pain, over time. It wasn't like a traumatic injury. It wasn't like you fell on your arm outstretched and dislocated your shoulder or something like that. It was something that happened over time and now you're experiencing pain and it's keeping you from training. This could be the video for you. This could help you a lot. I wish I saw this video a long time ago, right? So first off, let me tell you this, guys, just a quick hack. If you have shoulder problems, start hanging every day from a pull-up bar. Dead hang at least 2 to 3 minutes a day, not all at once. Break it up, but get up to 2 to 3 minutes a day of dead hang time. That will change your life, okay? If you take anything away from this video, it's that. It has nothing to do with the steel mace. But getting into the steel mace, so why the steel mace is so powerful. So I'll go over a few different points. So the first one I'll start with is obviously the sort of 360-degree fashion in which you're using the mace is a lot to do with all of this, of why it's so effective, why it's taking your shoulder through its full range of motion, why it's addressing all of the imbalances that cause shoulder pain that might not even be the shoulder at all. It could be something in your torso, in your hips, an imbalance neuromuscularly that could be causing the pain. This sort of movement helps it, and I'll go through why in so many different ways. So the first thing I'll talk about is sort of improved scapular control, right? And actually also in this, I'll talk about like the way it targets the rotator cuff muscles a lot more than anything else really. So the nature of the mace, as you can see, your core is heavily engaged when you're doing these movements. Even just talking about the 360 swing you see me doing with most of these movements, every time the mace head falls behind your head, your core is engaged, your core is braced, or else your chest would go up and the mace would fall behind you, right? So you keep your core engaged as it's falling behind you while your elbows come high. What this is doing is it's bracing your core, keeping the compensatory muscles and movements occupied, right? So you're not able to compensate for this movement, for your lack of mobility and strength through your shoulders by lifting your chest up, arching your back, things like that. You're keeping the core braced, and because of that, you're essentially taking your shoulder in its full range of motion under load, right? Hitting all the primary movers of the shoulder while also hitting the smaller stabilizing muscles of the shoulder. So effectively really targeting the rotator cuff muscles without any compensation happening, because it's sort of built into the movement, preventing that compensation, I mean. And then with this movement, you're naturally instilling this coordination between your arms and scapula. Okay, so if you have if your scapula wings off your body, which is very common, if you have shoulder pain, you probably have a winged scapula. Probably, I'd say maybe over 50% of the time, because that's a lot of what causes it. If you wing out your scapula, if you try it, try to grab your arm and push your scapula out behind you, your shoulder blade, the wing on your back out. What happens is you limit your shoulder joint range, right? So the more it wings, the less you can lift your shoulder up. The more your shoulder blade sticks to your back and your shoulders are rolled back and down, the more range you have without, again, compensation. So naturally, as you get the hang of this movement, at first it might be hard, it might be choppy, your elbows aren't coming high enough, blah, blah, blah. But the more you do it, the more you start to open up into this range and instill this sort of coordination between your arms and your scapula. Thus, when your arms are coming up, when your elbows are coming up, your scapula is staying down and it's braced with your core as well, because all of this is being instilled in this full body functional movement. That's why it's so powerful. Thus, teaching your body in sort of the deepest way possible without you having to mindfully do it. It just happens over time and practice. Teaching your body, teaching your scapulas to stick to the spine, to retract normally as your arm comes up overhead, thus giving you that full range of motion. Okay, so improve scapular control and really targeting and strengthening the rotator cuff muscles, which are usually weak and what cause a lot of problems. The second thing to talk about is tissue adaptation and resilience. So with this same concept that I'm talking about, guys, this bracing of the core, this sort of isolation of the shoulder joint, think of it like this. You're taking the shoulder joint through its full range of motion under load, right? So tissues, what people don't really understand is your tissues, your joints adapt to stress as well, right? The more stress you place on your joints in their full range of motion, the more they can handle, right? The more resilient, the more resistant they become to stress, right? So if you have somebody that trains the splits every day and they do like weighted splits and they, keep progressively overloading, if they can jump into the splits, right? But if you get somebody off the street who's never done that, you ask them to jump into the splits, they'll probably tear up their knees and their hip and their groin, like things will break, right? Like it'll be awful because their tissue hasn't built up that resilience. So you have to understand your tissue has this capability, right? So when I swing the mace on social media, sometimes I get comments saying like, oh, my shoulders hurt just watching this. Wait till this guy's 40 or something, his rotator cuff will be gone. It's all bullshit, guys. It's progressively overload. Obviously, I don't start swinging a 20 kilogram mace, but you can imagine the progression from a 6 kilogram to a 20 kilogram mace, what that will do over time to the tissues, to your joints, to your shoulders. They will be resilient to that stress. And in fact, the opposite of what these know-it-alls in the comments are saying, right? So it's actually not going to be harming me and I'm not going to have dead shoulders. It's bulletproofing my shoulders and keeping them healthy, alive, and active for a longer period of time, actually. Especially since, again, I've had shoulder problems. I've had shoulder pain for years, and I had no way around it. Even surgery didn't work. And it was stuff like this that got me to the point where not only did it heal my pain, but got my shoulders stronger than they've ever been and more confident in them than I've ever been, right? So that's another main thing, is obviously the adaptation that's happening in the joint. And then finally, guys, the addressing of imbalances, right? And this is throughout your whole kinetic chain, all right? So even just doing the 360 swing, for example, you're involving your hips, your core, your shoulders. Even your legs are somewhat involved, but they're not really that much involved, but they're involved in a way that your legs would be involved in, like swinging a baseball bat, right? Like we don't think of swinging a baseball bat as like a leg movement, but your legs are certainly involved, right? And same with swinging a tennis racket. Like a lot of the drive and power comes from your feet, right? And this is the case with anything that we do active, like functionally in real life or in sport, right? It's the ability to efficiently and smoothly, thus powerfully, transfer force from the soles of your feet to your upper extremities, right? Throwing punches, throwing balls, swinging rackets, whatever it might be, it's all the same thing. So the mace is training this in a way that you can repetitively do. Repetition. It's training this rhythmic movement of transferring force throughout the kinetic chain in various different directions in various different ways, right? So what this will do is it will start to reveal imbalances in your kinetic chain. This was the huge problem with me too, is you have imbalances in your core, and it's like a t-shirt, right? If you twist the t-shirt down here, it has implications up here on the shirt. It doesn't just affect down here. And our body works the same way with all of our fascial connective tissue and whatnot. If there's an issue in your core, there's an imbalance, your psoas is too tight while one is weak, it's going to pull your body and over time create these imbalances that will affect your posture. And then when you train, it causes pain, and then it keeps you from training, and then you have no motivation. And I've been there, right? So overcoming this through natural movement, right? Letting these movements naturally reveal these weaknesses, and through the practice of just doing them, it corrects them. And you're also getting stronger, you're also having fun, you're also getting a great workout, and you're not doing these boring like physical therapy exercises where you would normally have to do all of this very mindfully, like, okay, keep your chest braced while doing this, while breathing a certain way, and like all this stuff that it's just like, you don't need to be doing that when we have tools like this that sort of naturally instill that as you learn and move and do them in a not a mindless way, because you're obviously very focused, but in a more natural focused way, right? Like a flow state is what I'm trying to get at, right? And so instead of like this like mindful, oh my God, I'm paying attention to all these little things, it's more of like, I'm really paying attention to nothing but everything at the same time, because I'm in this flow state, because I'm moving rhythmically with this amazing ancient tool. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about, guys, is breathing mechanics, which also I would argue are the same thing as saying movement mechanics, right? Breathing and movement mechanics, because breathing is movement, right? It's the most fundamental movement you actually do. So most of us, I'd say 90% of us in today's day and age our breathing mechanics are not fully optimal, right? So we're lacking in some sort of way. And you've probably heard this. A lot of people breathe too much with their chest, or their mouth breathe, or there are all sorts of problems, right? Main thing is the diaphragm might not be functioning properly. When the diaphragm doesn't function properly, this is a huge muscle that allows you to breathe, that breathes, right? This is your breathing muscle. So when this muscle is dysfunctional, it will affect the pressure that's created in your core, called intra-abdominal pressure, which is established through the breath and through proper diaphragmatic function. When that's inhibited, you won't have this optimal intra-abdominal pressure, which is this sort of, think of it as like this 360-degree sort of balloon-like 3D pressure that's going in all different directions in your core. So when you think of breathing deep, when people start learning about breathing, they start learning about belly breathing. They breathe directly into their belly. That's also not the most correct thing. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not correct. You want to think of breathing as, again, this sort of 360-degree motion of expansion. This almost imagine like a little balloon inflating in your core. That's what breathing is, where your rib cage expands. Okay, I'm getting too deep into the breathing, guys, but the point is the breathing mechanics could be severely inhibited in most people, as it was with me. And this is the sort of fundamental root cause of a lot of the problems that come up posturally and movement-wise. And then, like I said, it's your fundamental movement pattern is how you breathe, right? So with the steel mace, you learn, again, under load, you're occupying certain muscles. Your core is active, but also you're occupying these upper respiratory muscles, right? So you're forcing the diaphragm to breathe under load, under pressure, very similar to the kettlebells. I would even argue the kettlebells are perhaps even better at instilling proper breathing mechanics, because you really get heavy weight, you really load these upper respiratory muscles, and you're really breathing deep and hard. So it really trains that diaphragm to work while, again, the upper respiratory muscles that would normally compensate are occupied. So it forces that, right? Again, naturally, without you having to like focus and mindfully do it, which is very tedious, right? So not only are you doing that, you're loading the muscles up and you're forcing the diaphragm to work harder, which is good. We want it to work so we can restore that capacity. But you're also learning how to sync your breath with your movement, right? Which is extremely important. So as you drop the mace behind you, breathing deeply in as all those muscles are occupied, which again is forcing that diaphragm to work really hard, and then breathing sharply out as you pull the mace over your head, whatever movement you're doing. But you're learning to sync the movement with inhale on certain times when you load up, exhale when you release that load, right? And that teaches, again, your diaphragm to not only work harder because it's under load, under pressure, under stress, but to do it in a rhythmic way that's synced with your movement. So everything becomes smoother and more powerful. Smoother, thus more powerful. It's like throwing a punch. When you learn how to punch, you have to exhale with the punch because it engages the deepest levels of your core and allows you to more efficiently transfer power through your kinetic chain, right? So you're training this repetitively and rhythmically with the steel mace. So in conjunction, all of this, guys, a simple 5 to 10, 15-minute mace session of doing mace swings, 3 to 5 times a week, or maybe even every day if it's something you want to just pick up a light mace in the morning and do it while you drink coffee. I think that's wonderful. It will change your life. And it's more than just working the shoulders. It's doing so much more than that. It's addressing all the imbalances in your kinetic chain, especially those housed in your core and your torso, and basically the connective matrix between your hips and your shoulders. All of that, simply put, gets restored and strengthened and taken to the next level. And then you can keep progressing, learning different movements, upping the weight. But again, if you want an actual plan to learn how to use a steel mace in a community and constant things being added every month, hit the link in my description, join the community, and we'll see you in there. And not to mention full kettlebell plan. Like the kettlebells are the primary thing of what I do with everything, right, guys? This is more of a, I think this perhaps is more powerful for addressing shoulder dysfunction and problems like that. But the fundamental, piece of your training should be the kettlebell. And then these things just further cherry on top, tie the knot up, right? But without further ado, I'll end the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you've made it this far, you better like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.